Welcome to 3 Count Commentaries. Another day, another WWE lawsuit. This time, a former writer decided to sue WWE, Vince McMahon, Stephanie McMahon, and various other writers under violations of the Civil Rights Act. So this young lady's name is Brittany Abrahams, and she decided to sue WWE. WWE, Chris Dunn, who was a writer, Ryan Callahan, who was a writer, Jennifer Pepperman, who was a writer, Christine Lubriano, who was a writer, Mike Heller, who was a writer, Vince McMahon, who was, I believe, at the CEO at the time, and Stephanie McMahon, who I believe was one of the content officers at the time. Now, this stems from 2020 to 2022 or thereabouts. I'm going to skip over a lot of the procedural boredom and get into some of the interesting things. But this is a 31-page document. I don't want to get to the fun stuff. But before we get there, I do want to discuss that because this is a discrimination lawsuit, and discrimination lawsuits are notoriously easy to file because discrimination is such a broad term. Who's offended? Offense is such a broad term. It's one of those things where you're like Jordan Peterson. Like, when you're talking to one person, it's easy to not offend people. When you're talking to two, it's a little bit more difficult. When you're talking to five, it's a little more difficult. When you're talking to 100 or 1,000, it's almost impossible to talk to people or talk to a large group without offending somebody. So when you're pitching ideas, and I'm not saying all these ideas were good or great or whatever. Some of them were just downright stupid. And I think most of them are actually jokes. But when you talk about speaking to people, you don't know who's going to be offended. And this is the trap door of all of these discrimination lawsuits, is that anybody can just walk on through, say, oh my God, I'm offended. And then when they get fired, when they lose their job, all of a sudden, pain, suffering, damage, my career is over. I mean, in a fair world, just this statement, which was in one of her opening comments, after she talks about how everybody is a white male or a white female, because that is very important. It is very, very important that these people are white males and white females because, you're filing a discrimination lawsuit. This person, before we really get into the allegations, said this: at all times herein, plaintiff was an exemplary employee who did not disobey order or directives from her superiors. Plaintiff performed all duties assigned in a diligent and thorough manner. Though her time as WWE writer, plaintiff received numerous compliments for her work performance, including praise from WWE executives, defended Mr. McMahon, defended Mrs. McMahon, and Mr. Bruce Pritchard for her writing. This sounds like a lot of discrimination. She got compliments for her work. Such discrimination she faced while working in WWE. Then she continues, plaintiff always got along well with her co-workers. She got along with everybody. Everybody loved her work. How in the hell is it possible then that she admits that everybody got along great with her and then she did a good job? So why is she filing a lawsuit again? Well, because she was fired. That's why. She was fired. Now, in a fair and just society, if somebody comes up to you and says that everybody involved is racist and all this kind of crap, but I got along well with everybody. You got along well with all these racists. This entire den of racists that you just exposed here, you got along well with all of them. And this is in her lawsuit that she got along well with everybody. This is something, again, when you look at Twitter, people are digging through the dirt, and the dirt is pretty funny, and we're going to talk about that in a moment. But I want to talk about the legitimacy of the lawsuit. Just because somebody is offended by something, just because somebody doesn't like something, doesn't mean it should be grounds for a lawsuit. Look, a lot of this stuff is just, like I said, a lot of it is really stupid. But it comes across as a guy making off-color jokes. Now, I should have said this from the beginning, but let's talk about this a little bit more. Most of this is going to be about a guy named Ryan Callahan, who I guess today, is the vice president of SmackDown. He was the lead writer at the time. Almost all of these comments that are made, or these jokes, or these pitches, if you want to take it literally, these pitches are made by him for the most part. So Stephanie and Vince really didn't do anything except not punish this guy. That was pretty much it from the Vince and Stephanie portion of this. Now, you wouldn't know that if you actually looked through the wrestling media, because everybody's posting pictures of Vince's face and trying to make it seem like Vince was fostering some kind of racist work environment. Most of this stuff probably never even made it to Vince. He didn't even know about it. So ultimately, that's just another part of this thing. But to say that you got along well with everybody and that you were getting compliments for your work, that doesn't sound like they were being racist towards you, sister. But we're in this situation being very, very difficult. So we're going to continue because this is important. This is a very important stuff. People are very hurt. Feelings were hurt. There were some other bit players in here. We'll mention them when we get to them. Okay. This is a 31-page document. We're not going to go through every single page, but we're going to go through some of this stuff. Here is one of the complaints, the Bianca Belair complaint. Upon information and belief, Mrs. Belair is one of two dark-skinned black African-American female wrestlers. The said scene included offensively racist and stereotypical jargon, which plaintiff found objectionable. By way of example, according to the script, Dunn intended Mrs. Belair, this would be Chris Dunn, one of the writers. Christopher Dunn intended Miss Belair, the said black female WWE wrestler, because they're going to keep beating that race drum, because that's what they do. This is a race lawsuit in New York, which means it probably won some money, and it shouldn't win anything. But let's hear what it says. Don't make me take off my earrings and beat your ass, which are lines based on upon cruel, ugly stereotypes of dark-skinned black women. Plaintiff asserts that Mrs. Belair uttering that line was, and still is, negatively stereotypical of race and gender, and plaintiff found it offensive and still finds it offensive. So, shouldn't the person who has to say the line be the one that be offended? And we're going to talk about that in a moment, because apparently, according to this lawsuit, Bianca Belair actually was pitched this line and was offended by it. So it says, quote, Dunn allowed plaintiff to write a first draft of Mrs. Belair's scene, so plaintiff included positive references to Mrs. Belair's rich family history and sent it to Dunn for feedback. Dunn told plaintiff that the draft, quote, looks great. I'm going to make some edits and submit it to Callahan. However, Dunn subjected plaintiff's draft to substantial editing, including inserting the said racial and gender stereotypes. That same night, plaintiff complained about the racially offensive and discriminatory nature of the scene to one of her WWE superiors, defendant Callahan. Plaintiff emailed Callahan and said, I know I'm new. I'm not trying to be disrespectful or step on Dunn or anyone's toes, but I would be remiss if I didn't mention that Mrs. Belair's scene includes racial jargon and offensive stereotypes, particularly her go-home line. Plaintiff also requested clarification on protocol on moving forward with her complaint. In conversation with Mrs. Belair the following day, Ms. Belair informed plaintiff that she told Dunn, quote, 3 different times that I don't want to say that line, but he never listens to me. He puts that line in every week. Mrs. Belair said the script's discriminatory line made her look ghetto. Wow. Okay, now, in a situation where you have something like this, let's say, it is up to the performer to make the decision. The performer, who's the one who actually has to say the line or perform the match, they should have ultimately the final say on what they can, and people should own their own bodies. Say she says what she wants to say. If she doesn't want to say it, she doesn't want to say it, whatever. The plaintiff then chose to get offended on Bianca Belair's behalf. It is pretty nutty. Let's continue this though real quick. It says, additionally, WWE's failure and or refusal to address plaintiff's complaint emboldened WWE employees, including Dunn and Callahan, to further discriminate against and to retaliate against plaintiff in response to her protected conduct. What was the retaliation? Here's the retaliation. WWE kept the discriminatory line in the script. Plaintiff was scheduled to shadow Dunn on 2 scenes that day, one of which was the scene with Mrs. Belair. However, halfway through the day, Dunn informed Plaintiff that she would now follow Callahan. So now she was shadowing Callahan. When Plaintiff requested Dunn's assistance, he told Plaintiff, "You handle it. It's your scene now." Callahan showed up for the taping of Plaintiff's scenes about 90 seconds before they went live, and he never once mentioned Plaintiff's email. Defendant switched Plaintiff's assignment and made her shadow WWE's lead writer, who was not present until the show filmed live. The switch in assignment was due to Plaintiff's race and gender and had the purpose and effect of sabotaging Plaintiff's career with the WWE and to serve as a pretext for retaliatory adverse actions. This is a person who says that everybody liked what she did and she got compliments on her work, but simply she complained about a scene and thought that because she was a black woman, then why didn't she use her black woman powers to fix the scene? She was in control of the scene now. Her and Bianca Belair could have gotten together and created the scene the way that they wanted it. This is giving a black woman responsibility. Her first day on the job, or within the first couple of weeks on the job, by the way, she was put in control of a scene featuring Bianca Belair. And she complained about it by saying, "Oh no, you gave me responsibility. How dare you? How dare you? Oh, I don't really know what I'm doing. Then shut up. You don't know what you're doing. Shut up." Okay. If you want to criticize, but also I don't want to touch it either. I don't want to do anything. I just want to stand behind you, which is literally what she was doing. As you know, when you're shadowing somebody at work, you're literally following them around, trying to see how they do things. So that means you literally following this guy around. Then if he says something you don't like, you're reporting it to the boss behind his back. He's like, "Look, I don't want to deal with that. Get her out of here." So they moved her along and put her in control of the scene that she wanted to be in control of anyway, but she didn't want to really be in control. She didn't really want the responsibility. She just wanted to nitpick the white dude who apparently was doing something wrong and he couldn't do it right. So she was put in the position to fix it, and she bungled it because she felt like, "Oh no, they're trying to sabotage me." Oh, this is the humor right there. Defendant's actions were clearly discriminatory, as similarly situated white male WWE employees are not treated in this manner. Defendant did not provide Plaintiff with any training on what needed to be done during the live broadcast. Guess what, numbnuts? That's why you're shadowing, right? You're following because you're trying to learn what to do during the broadcast. But what you were doing is looking for things to complain about. Instead of trying to learn the job, and then once you learn the job, then you can criticize. You're trying to criticize before you even learn the damn job. Your feet aren't even wet on the job yet. And you're coming in with all these opinions, which is fine if you have experience. But if you don't have any experience, then you need to shut up and learn the job. Then you can have your opinions. If you being left in charge is a problem for you, then you can't be in charge of what this guy is writing or what this other person is saying. You need to be quiet. You know, it's such a big issue. You know, it's one thing to be like, "Hey," you could even talk to the guy. Like, maybe we should do it like this. There's a way of criticizing people where they don't even feel like they're being criticized. You know, it takes tact, TACT, tact. You can tactfully step in and change the verbiage or do whatever you needed to do without causing all this ruckus. But you barely in the company, already putting paperwork on people. So he dumped you. I would have done the same damn thing. If I don't want to be bothered with somebody standing behind me, the snitch department following me around all day, I don't want that. Sorry. I'm sorry, I don't want the snitch department. All right, here's another one. Following plaintiff's complaint, defendants increased the intensity of their discriminatory misconduct, including deliberately subjecting plaintiff to a number of racist pitches. Oh, really? It was discussed in WWE Writers Slack channel before a show that a new wrestler, Reggie, would dress in drag, complete with wig and tights, quote, so he could partner with Carmella, a female wrestler, in a tag team match against other female wrestlers. Well, okay, I don't like that idea. Reggie is a dark-skinned, African-American, black, straight male wrestler. I mean, goddamn, do we know his blood type? Can we get his goddamn social security number in here too? How much more do we need to know about this guy? It's ridiculous. Okay, so given this pitch was shared via a Slack app, defendants McMahon and Mrs. McMahon, as well as other WWE higher-ups, including Mr. Pritchard and Mr. Ed Koskey, were included on the thread. Okay, that don't mean they read it. I don't think they read it. But let's talk about this supposedly racist Reggie pitch. I guess anytime a black man is asked to wear a dress should be considered racist. I hope that this becomes part of our our culture in the United States. So we can start talking about all of these people who like to wear dresses for fun, why all of that should be racist, offensive stereotypes. Because by God, it's true. I am deeply offended by a man in a dress. Deeply offended. Deeply. And personally offended. All right. Here's another one. Plaintiff co-worker Mrs. Listenberger responded to the thread, observing that putting a straight black man in drag might perpetuate harmful stereotypes that would offend viewers. Definitely would have offended me. By the way, Reginald has dreadlocks, which is long hair. He really didn't need a wig. He didn't really need a dress either, you know, if we're being honest. But if you want to say that he was, cross-dressing, he really didn't need a wig. The wig just would have been for comedic purposes. But, of course, WWE eventually scrapped the discriminatory pitch, but only in response to a white Caucasian, my brain went Christian for some reason. White Christian individuals' protected conduct in the form of Miss Listenberger's complaint. Or more than one person complained and people were like, you know what? Maybe two different people think it's a problem. Forget it. You know, which is kind of what, like in these situations, you're always talking about people who think that there is only one response to things. Like this only happened to me because I'm black. It's like in a fair society, you should have to prove that this only happened to you because you're black. And in which case you would have a good grounds for a lawsuit. But if there could have been at least some other confounding reason why this thing happened, then it's not because you're black. For instance, it's not that they didn't listen to you because you're black. Maybe it's because you are already complaining, but it also could have been the way that you said it. It could have also been that this other person has more authority than you, and thus they listen to that person because they have more seniority, they have more authority than you. Who knows? You know, I would have to see the flow chart. I think there is a flow chart in here somewhere. Here's another one. WWE forced wrestler Apollo Crews to speak with a Nigerian accent just because of his Nigerian lineage. Apollo Crews is a black Nigerian-born male. Last I checked, he's from California. All right, I don't believe he was born in Nigeria. I believe his parents were. But if you're offended by Apollo Crews, then certainly Black Panther must have driven you up the fucking wall when you got all of these non-Africans talking about Wakanda forever and talking with accents. Oh my God. Oh my God. How horrible. Disney made like over $400 million spewing racism. And guess what? They had the goddamn vice president of the United States on screen talking about Wakanda forever. a Nigerian-born wrestler or a Nigerian descendant wrestler being asked to speak in a Nigerian accent for a Nigerian-based character. Oh my goodness. Horrifying. I know, right? Kind of ridiculous. It's not like they made him the King of England or something like that, or they tried to give him a slave gimmick or something stupid like that. But whatever. This one was especially stupid. In 2021, Callahan pitched that a white male Caucasian wrestler with a hunting gimmick would hunt a black male wrestler for fun. In a nutshell, the said gimmick was pitched for new wrestlers Shane, Thorne, and Reggie was, since, quote, Since Shane is Australian, we would make him a crocodile hunter, and instead of crocodile, he hunts people. A storyline was pitched by Callahan where Shane would capture Reggie and constantly beat him up, but Reggie will always escape after being captured. Holding Reggie captive in cages was also discussed. Plaintiff found Callahan's pitch highly offensive and objectionable. Plaintiff again objected to her superior's racially motivated misconduct, specifically stating that a gimmick where a white man hunting a black African man for sport is racist. Callahan laughed and sarcastically responded, "Oh, what? Is that a bad thing?" Callahan's comments and conduct had the purpose and effect of humiliating and intimidating plaintiff and dramatically altered her work environment for the worse. But she got along with everybody. She's constantly complaining about every single goddamn thing, but she got along with everybody. All right, let's talk about this thing. Now, they pitched some kind of Looney Tunes situation where Shane Thorne would be like the Wiley Coyote and Reggie will be the Road Runner. Similar to, the 24/7 title situations, which is what it sounded like. That's what they would have been doing. It's some kind of situation where Shane Thorne would have been hunting Reggie. Now, the crazy thing is, it's really mostly a stereotype from Shane Thorne's perspective, that because he's Australian, all of a sudden he's a crocodile hunter. What you think people in Australia, all they do is hunt crocodiles and dodge kangaroo all day? Nobody talks about how that, when was the last time a white man sued somebody for racial discrimination and won? Has it ever happened in the history of the world? But this was actually more of a stereotype from his perspective. Second, in the way that I just mentioned it, as a Looney Tunes situation similar to the 24/7 title, which is probably how it was pitched. Is that offensive? It's only offensive if you phrase it the way that they phrase it in this lawsuit. That is, a white man is chasing a black man to put him in a cage. It's only offensive if you put it in those terms. If you create a chase scenario in which Shane Thorne is chasing around Reggie for whatever reason, then you can say two characters are chasing each other. One character is chasing another one, seeking to lock him in a cage for whatever reason. Now, of course, we'll have to have a reason to why he wants to beat him up and put him in a cage. Like, why would he do that? But it sounds like it would be some kind of Wile E. Coyote. He's going to set some traps or whatever like that. It's a stupid gimmick, and it sounds dumb. But is it racist? Well, it's only racist if you put it in the terms that she decided to put him in. It's not racist if you just walk up to somebody and say, look, we're going to create this, I'm going to write a movie in which this guy is going to constantly chase around this other guy and try to catch him with like nets and stuff, because that's Spider-Man and Kraven the Hunter right there. Spider-Man's constantly on the run. Kraven the Hunter's trying to catch him with like, tranquilizers and all kinds of other gadgets or whatever. People have done chase scenes in movies and TV shows all the time. It's literally only when you add the race and try to make this would be in woke means. It means that you're looking at everything through this discriminatory. How could this be discrimination? Like I said, you could be discriminatory in a bowl of oatmeal if you want to. You could complain about it. We've seen them complain about labels on pancake bottles. So I really, really, really don't take their calls for discrimination seriously. All right. But this one was at least. All right, let's get into the legitimate meat of this thing. Some of the stuff that might really be a problem for WWE at some point in the future. All right, so it says, in or around 2021, November, a black female writer's assistant was fired after reporting WWE lead writer Callahan for creating a racially hostile environment against African-American employees. Shortly thereafter, WWE questioned plaintiff about her experiences with Callahan, purportedly pursuant to an investigation into the said black female writer's assistant's protected conduct. Plaintiff was asked if she, quote, witnessed or was the victim of harassment on the creative writing team. Plaintiff described the discrimination and hostile environment she had been subjected to by Pepperman and had witnessed by Pepperman toward other minority employees. At a different time, plaintiff received a call from WWE human resource representatives, they said, quote, "It was brought to our attention that you called some pitches racist." Okay, and I want to know if it was directed at you or a part of direction for a storyline. Plaintiff told them it was for a storyline, but that it came from WWE lead writer Callahan, so it really shouldn't have been said once, let alone twice, no matter serious or in jest. Plaintiff told them it was, quote, an offensive joke. An offensive joke. She was upset about offensive jokes. Oh my God, this is... However, WWE Human Resources kept repeating, "But was it said about you?" WWE never agreed that it shouldn't have been said at all by someone of authority. WWE also never asked if plaintiff was okay after hearing those racist and sexist pitches. Let's pause for a moment. She needed her pussy pampered. I'm sorry, her booty pampered. Are you okay? Did it hurt you? Where did that racism touch you? Do you need a Band-Aid? Do you need a Band-Aid? After all of that racism hit you, surely you need surgery. What the fuck? Come on. In or around 2021, November, a WWE writer, Mr. Zach Hyatt, admitted to plaintiff and another black female writer, Miss Silvers, that he was, quote, afraid to critique his group of black wrestlers. Plaintiff and Mrs. Silvers spoke to the black performers directly, who expressed feeling, quote, unheard and misunderstood culturally, and who thanked plaintiff and Miss Silvers for their compassionate approach to writing for black and other minority characters. Well, she did a good job, huh? Shortly thereafter, plaintiff and Miss Silvers proceeded to share this information with their WWE lead writers. Oh, I'm pretty sure that turned out well, right? Plaintiff asserts that defendants engaged and continue to engage in a pattern and practice of discrimination against black female employees, African-American female employees, because those are two different things apparently, and other minority employees, because there are Nigerian Americans that work there or something. I don't know what's going on anymore. In or around late November 2021, racially discriminatory comments were casually made by plaintiff's white male Caucasian lead writer Callahan about a Muslim wrestler. Now this one is actually interesting. Ms. Silvers and plaintiff, the only black writers on the team at the time, were asked to pitch a love storyline between wrestlers Aaliyah, Mansoor, and Angel Garza, who are both Muslim. Now, Angel Garza is not a Muslim. This is a mistype. Angel Garza is Hispanic. Aaliyah and Mansoor are both Muslim. Ms. Silvers and plaintiff pitched that Mansoor has a secret that he's keeping from Aaliyah. Callahan disagreed with the secret Mrs. Silver and plaintiff wanted for the character. Okay, what was the secret? Instead, Callahan suggested, how about his secret is that he's behind the 9/11 attacks? Oh my God. Miss Silvers nervously laughed and said, let's not do that. Let's talk about the other part of the pitch. Callahan said, oh, I guess you're the lead writer now. Mrs. Silvers again laughed nervously and said, for just this moment, so we can talk about something else. Following this, whenever a writer asked Callahan a question, he would simply reply, ask Miss Silvers. She's the lead writer now. Callahan's comments and conduct in this regard were clearly discriminatory, given plaintiff's similarly situated white male counterparts. White Caucasian, but you know they meant male. Counterparts were not treated in this manner. Additionally, here, Heller shared a sexist pitch for a Muslim female wrestler, wherein the said female wrestler lacked authority over her own mind and body. She's being real, not specific here. Again, Miss Silvers and plaintiff created a love storyline between wrestlers Aaliyah, Mansoor, and Angel Garza. In this pitch, Aaliyah and Mansoor were meant to fall in love while a jealous Angel tries to break them up. The pitch made Aaliyah appear intelligent and confident in herself and her desires, containing Aaliyah speaking up for herself against both Angel and Mansoor, and her having her love and affection earned. Miss Silvers and plaintiff pitched the storyline to Heller, who expressed confusion about Aaliyah and her choices, particularly her never wanting to be with Angel, who was the obvious villain in the story. Heller was also confused that Aaliyah, quote, wasn't crying on the stairs after her breakup with Mansoor. Heller then counterpitched that plaintiff make the storyline a love triangle, objectifying and bimbofying, because that's a word, Aaliyah. Heller's sexist counterpitch include Angel being forward and aggressive in his efforts to date Aaliyah, Aaliyah being easily swayed by Angel's evil tactics, and Aaliyah being confused about which guy she should date, oscillating between the two men until the end of the storyline. That all sounds pretty generic. That sounds like a pretty generic will they, won't they, love triangle storyline. But somehow, because you notice that one of these people, like, you know, all these people are minorities, by the way. But because, you know, I'm guessing the Mansoor Aaliyah part has something to do with hijabs. I'm almost guaranteed that it's got something to do with, you know, Aaliyah not wearing a hijab. I'm almost, it's right there. They're not saying it. It's right there, though, and I can't ignore it. Anyway, let's go back to this. Heller and Callahan made these discriminatory comments while plaintiff and other female Black American employees were in his presence in the writer's room. It says, quote, plaintiff spoke up and said, doesn't that take Aaliyah's agency? Plaintiff told Heller that she wanted to make a new pitch that was, quote, more feminist, especially because Aaliyah's character is already marketed as being super hot. Plaintiff, along with a number of her co-workers, including Miss Silver and Mr. Barbash, also complained about the discriminatory nature of the lead writer's comments. Oh my God. So they get into the argument about the love triangle and it being pitched to Lou Briano and Mr. McMahon and Mrs. McMahon and all this kind of stuff, and how everybody's getting mixed in all of this. It turns into a really ugly web. Now, the love triangle part, they're leaving out a lot of details from what it sounds like. The part of the story, of course, is that Callahan said, why doesn't the secret be that he plotted the 9/11 attacks? It's like, bro, you can't even make that joke. You know, yeah, you can say he stepped over the line there. That was kind of way over the line. But there's something in this. I can see them acting this storyline out and saying that somebody disagrees with your perspective on how to write a story. That does not mean it's racist. Just because it doesn't fit your perfectly feminist worldview does not mean that it's racist or sexist. It means that they disagree with you. Now, even if you want to say the 9/11 part, which, of course, Callahan claims is a joke, and I believe that it's a joke because Mansoor would only been like, people on the internet have been yelling he'd have been 6 or 7 or whatever when it happened. It's very weird that Mansoor has become the most, the guy with the most sympathy out of this whole ordeal, considering he was the guy who was making fun of Jews before he became a wrestler, and all the Jewish wrestling fans never forgot about it and never shut the hell up about it. So every time he shows up on the screen, they make sure to mention that he was making fun of Shia LaBeouf doing the grubby Jew hands thing. And now he's like the soup du jour, where he's like the guy where, oh my God, poor Mansoor, why is this happening to him? This place is so horrible. Why would they treat him so badly? Meanwhile, they was complaining about him existing because he's from Saudi Arabia, so. Look, there's no two ways about the Callahan comment. It's absolutely in poor taste. At the same time, though, the idea of where you want to take Aaliyah's character, all of these options are fairly decent options. It all depends on what way you want to present the character. Do you want to present the character as, what they call bimbofying, whatever that means? And that's incredibly vague. That and also a matter of personal taste. Who's to even say that she's a bimbo? Maybe she makes different decisions because she's a different person. She's also Canadian. She's not like from, Iraq or something like that. So while she's Muslim, she lives a Western lifestyle. So she would date and live Westernly. And that would be something would be discussed in the storyline, perhaps. Now the love triangle as a plot is pretty standard. Angel Garza's a villain who sways away Mansoor's girlfriend or something like that. I can see it. It works. This could have been entertaining TV. Legit. I'm looking at this and saying to myself, it would have been fun. Mansoor is a sort of fun character, especially at the time he was pretty bland. He needed something. Angel Garza is absolutely fantastic in his scumbag Romeo character. He's tremendous. Would have been great for him. Would have showcased him in a great light. Aaliyah is hot, but she was kind of nondescript. So it would have given her something to do in terms of what kind of person is she. And of course, if she starts one way, she could turn into another way, where she could have easily been sort of the bimbo girlfriend of Angel Garza. But then, she realizes that Angel's a jerk and then she leaves him. Or it could have been that she was the goody two shoes who, I'm going to stay with my man, Mansoor. And then over the time, she turns on him and stabs him in the back to run off with the evil Angel Garza. There could have been 100 ways we could have done this. None of those are sexist. None of those are racist. If anything, the crime is that they created a love triangle that was pretty bland and standard at the time. So, getting us all mixed up with this love storyline really obscures the 9/11 line, though. Like the 9/11 stuff is what jumps off the page. That's the stuff that's important. That's the stuff you should build a lawsuit around. But it also apparently was never actually pitched to Mansoor. It was just a joke thrown around in the writer's room. So, while in poor taste, and probably he should be suspended and or fired for it, depending on, how severe you want to be, that was not a pitch that made it to the ears of anybody who matters. That's something that you might want to write an email about, maybe, if that's the kind of way he's looking at some of the talent. But that's, to me, is one of the worst things. That is the worst thing in this entire lawsuit. It's literally the worst thing in this entire lawsuit. And it's buried in garbage about a love triangle between Mansoor and Angel Garza and feminism and the rest of that. None of that shit matters. Okay? If you're trying to build a lawsuit on racial discrimination, literally that statement about him and 9/11 would not have been made if Mansoor was, let's say, Chad Gable. It wouldn't have been made. All right? If it was a comment about maybe Aaliyah and a hijab, or maybe her dressing conservatively, or whatever the case may be, that wouldn't have been made without knowing that she's a Muslim. Okay? But that could be something that you could play with on her character, because that's something that you see on TV. Heavens to Betsy. They got Miss Marvel, the not Captain Marvel, Miss Marvel, the little Arab, I think she's Lebanese or something like that in the comic books, or Palestinian, whatever they've done to her now. And she doesn't wear a hijab. And she struggles with being a good Muslim, also being kind of westernized. And that was the push when the character was first created, was how Muslim is she compared to tradition versus how Western she is because she was born here. That's the similar situation you could have done with Aaliyah. She's Muslim, but she was born in the West. She's got booty pictures, but she's also, a Muslim girl. That's definitely something she could have played on, because it's her. It's who she is. It's what she has to deal with, probably with her own parents. Now, for some reason, we got mixed up in all this shit while this guy's making 9/11 jokes. The 9/11 joke should have been the focus, right? That should have been the main focus here. But because this Callahan fellow dared to argue with her, he's a racist. Now, it seems like she has a really big problem with this Callahan fellow. Despite the fact that she claims that she got along with everybody, she also complains about this guy incessantly throughout the lawsuit. But this isn't why she's filing this lawsuit, by the way. Yeah, this comment was pretty fucked. But she filing this lawsuit because she got fired. Why did she get fired? Well, let's talk about it. Now, here's the real issue. She buried this right here in the middle of this. For WrestleMania 37, WWE produced limited edition WrestleMania 37 branded chairs, as it had done in many previous WWE WrestleMania events. These chairs are movable and meant to be used for temporary seating in the arena where the WrestleMania event is held. WWE employees who were not African American and who had not engaged in protected activity were permitted to take these limited edition event WrestleMania branded chairs for their own private use following the WrestleMania event. That's very specific. Only people who are not me got to use these chairs, right? In the years prior to plaintiff making her complaint of discrimination, WWE did not subject employees to disciplinary action in response to taking the removable temporary seating limited edition WrestleMania branded chairs from the WrestleMania events. So, kind of like those WrestleMania chairs, huh? WWE did not subject these employees to discriminatory action in response to keeping the limited edition event-specific items, including WrestleMania branded chairs for their own private use. In fact, at the end of WrestleMania events years prior, WB permitted its writing staff to remove limited edition event-specific items from the WrestleMania venues. We're getting very close here, I promise. Upon information and belief, WWE maintained a policy whereby its employees were allowed to remove limited edition event-specific items, including WrestleMania branded chairs from the WrestleMania events, and to keep the limited edition event-specific items for their own private use without fear of reprisal. So you know what we building up to. Let's just get to it. I'm going to skip to it and I'm going to come back to the Mansoor thing, all right? I was trying to go in order, but she purposefully separated all of this stuff together, right? Because she's trying to lay out a timeline. So there's about a year in between this stuff. So WrestleMania 38, this was after WrestleMania 37. On or about March 29, in the days leading up to WrestleMania 38, one of the plaintiff's fellow WWE writers asked Callahan if he and other writers could each help themselves to a WrestleMania chair at the end of the event. Pepperman informed the writer's room that, yeah, but you have to wait till the show to take it. Another writer said you can't take it during the show. Yet another senior writer says that people have been allowed to take WrestleMania branded chairs at the previous year's WrestleMania. Pepperman told a story about an employee checking a WrestleMania branded chair at the airport and mentioned that employees can ask WWE's production team to ship the WrestleMania chairs home for them. These stories all evince WWE's established WrestleMania memorabilia custom and or policy. At no point did WWE lead writers who were present during this extensive discussion instruct plaintiff or her co-workers that they were not entitled to remove limited edition event-specific items, including WrestleMania branded chairs, from the venue at the end of WrestleMania 38, on or about April 2 or 3, 2023. Upon information and belief, on or about April 2nd, one Caucasian male writer and one black male writer removed WrestleMania chairs after the event. One of the Caucasian male writers took a WrestleMania chair to the writer's room in plain sight of defendant Lubriano, the WWE lead writers, WWE Vice President Mr. Ed Koskey, and WWE Senior Vice President Mr. Pritchard. It is clear that WWE's actions were discriminatory given defendants did not reprimand either writer for taking their WrestleMania 38 branded chairs. Upon information and belief, defendants had several opportunities that evening to reprimand the employees for taking WrestleMania branded chairs and or to prevent employees from taking WrestleMania branded chairs. However, at no point did defendants reprimand the male WWE writers for removing WrestleMania 38 branded chairs. So guess what she did? On or about April 3rd, 2022, at the end of the event, plaintiff and a co-worker each took a WrestleMania 38 branded chair, showed their badges to security, and were allowed backstage while carrying the WrestleMania branded chairs. Plaintiff and her male Caucasian co-worker took the WrestleMania 38 branded chairs to the writer's room, where WWE lead writers and vice president and senior vice president were present. Plaintiff placed her WrestleMania branded chair directly next to Heller and openly discussed having taken the WrestleMania 38 branded chair. Plaintiff supervisor emailed the writing team instructing people to return the WrestleMania 38 branded chairs and demanding why they thought taking the WrestleMania branded chairs was a wise choice. On April 7th, in retaliation for engaging in protected conduct, defendants unlawfully and pretextually terminated plaintiff's employment. She got fired for stealing WrestleMania merchandise. That's why she's filing a lawsuit. Everybody's stealing these chairs. I'm going to steal me one too. Wait a minute. Are you sure they were just taking the chairs and they didn't have to pay for them first? Are you sure they didn't ask first at the very least? She didn't say anywhere here that she asked anybody. It didn't say that she walked up to her boss and say, hey, can I have one of these chairs? It seems like everybody's just going to have a chair. Can I have one? Or are these people buying them and then having them shipped home? Maybe that ought to be a part of this equation at some point. That maybe he paid for his chair and you did not. Or maybe a couple of you got dumb and didn't know that other people paid for the chairs. Or maybe they did say that you could take the chairs, and then at some point between WrestleMania 37 and 38, things changed. Like sometimes you can go to work wearing jeans and sometimes you can't. Sometimes you can, your boss won't say anything if you're looking at your cell phone at work. Sometimes they do. These things go back and forth. Now, was she the only person fired is the question. That's the real question. Was she the only one actually fired, but ultimately she was fired for stealing merchandise? She's filing a lawsuit because she got fired for stealing merchandise. Yeah, buddy. Come on, man. Now let's go with this. While plaintiff's employment with WWE was a harrowing and traumatic experience, the events complained of herein do not reflect a unique incident, as a rudimentary internet research paints a similarly distressing picture of discriminatory abuse and misconduct by WWE and those occupying the positions of powerful in WWE. Now, this, of course, each word pretty much had a citation. So the citations were an article from The Atlantic. Pro wrestling is fake, but the race problem isn't. Tom Cole accuses WWF of sexual harassment and committed suicide, which was the Ring Boy scandal. WWE, the most racist organization, a Bleacher Report article. A Bloomberg article about Vince McMahon paying off women. And of course, talk of Vince McMahon raping people. So none of this happened to her, by the way. She's just saying, well, this company, which ruined my life, even though I got along with everybody and I got plenty of compliments on my work. It ruined my life and it's a terrible place to work. So she got fired and decided to file a lawsuit. The end. Like I said, man, in a fair and just society, this thing would get tossed out. Look, there is literal discrimination out here in the world. People literally are mistreated for how they look and how they perceive the world or whatever. But to let these vipers into your workplace, to live and work under constant surveillance from these people, that has got to be more stressful than anything I can possibly imagine. You looking at them, they looking at you, you looking at them, you looking at you. They're writing emails behind your back. They're constantly snitching on you. They're taking things that could possibly be jokes and, running it to the boss and trying to run lawsuits or whatever. It's got to be incredibly stressful. It's got to be one of the most foul things that, that Marxism has brought upon us is the snitch society. If you really were mistreated and you really hated the job, you just quit. It's amazing that the place became incredibly racist only after they fired you. How weird is that? Oh, I got fired. Now all of a sudden you're a racist. Now, I got along with everybody. I got compliments on my work. I was given a permanent job for being a temp. But my God, all of you are just so damn racist. I can't stand to be around you anymore. You fired me. Well, goddammit, I quit. Well, look, let me be honest. Now it's time for me to calm down a little bit. Let's bring it down. There is legitimate discrimination out there. But to be quite honest, a lot of this discrimination that people talk about is inflated. A lot of this, like this lawsuit, is completely inflated discrimination in my book. A lot of this stuff, it is stupid, it is insensitive, but does it mean that there's a racist workplace? The answer is no. It means that one guy is a fucking moron, okay? And that at the very least, he should be fired. At the very least. If you just want to cut bait with him, we don't really need him, you can fire him. Okay, fine. But to say that the entire company is racist because of a couple of humorous pitches, which, let's be honest, she worked there for over a year, which means she worked on 52 SmackDowns or 52 Raws or whatever the case may be. And she came up with 4 or whatever things that could possibly be racist. One of whom is an actor being asked to speak in an accent. Another is only racist if you specifically look at the race of the people involved. Another is stereotypical, but since Bianca Belair goes, girl, since she does that anyway, how is it any much of a problem for her to go, I'm gonna take my earrings off or whatever the case may be, which, could be extra. And then the last one, the only one that is legitimately racist, is the Mansoor one. That's legitimately racist. And legitimately something they would not have pitched for anybody else except for somebody with his background. Okay? And she worked there for a year. She worked there for a year. And it was so racist, she could only scratch the bottom of the barrel to get 4 instances of potentially racial issues in the writing team. Now, almost nobody will discuss this in that way. Most people would just be, inflamed and throw people up overboard and all this kind of stuff. I'm looking at it like, if it was that bad, she wouldn't have worked there that long. If it was that bad, they wouldn't have given her any compliments. They wouldn't have hired her for the job. She wouldn't have even got the job in the first place if they was really racist and didn't want her there. The bottom line is she screwed it up. She screwed up. She took a chair without asking for it or without paying for it, whatever the situation is. Maybe they did let them take the chairs before and now they don't or whatever. But ultimately, she got fired not for doing bad work. She got fired for stealing. I'm sorry. You can't come back and then say, well, all of this stuff is unfair. And look, there's a lot of people that I genuinely like who are not going to go through this lawsuit and look at some of the claims being made. They just say WWE racist and be like, what? Vince McMahon? Are you serious? He's a racist. He said the N-word on TV. Remember all that stuff where he, all the black people stuff that he did throughout the years, Saba Simba, all this kind of stuff. It's like, how about you actually read the lawsuit? All right? Actually read the lawsuit. Look, I'm not surprised by a lot of people. A lot of people are not surprising me. In other words, they love this red meat of, somebody being called a racist. Most people think this has something to do with Vince. This has nothing to do with Vince. Vince's name only pops up in ways that give her compliments. Mr. McMahon gave me a compliment. And maybe he was in that Slack app, because technically speaking, when you're a boss or you're upper management, especially if other people work in an office, you want to be a part of these email and text chains just so you will know who is, contacting who and who is saying what. It's your way of surveilling their behavior. You're not going to stand over them all day like a supervisor at a factory. But what you'll do is you'll put yourself in the email chain so you'll know who is being contacted back and forth. So if something were to happen, it's like something like this. You will be able to scroll through and say, oh yeah, this is Ryan's dumbass. Okay, I got him. We got him right here. Because I was CC'd in the email. We do it all the time when we work in the office. That's not that much of a surprise. To think that he would actually need to read it would be the surprise. She can't even prove that he read it. Or Stephanie. Or anybody for that matter. Apparently she was just being ignored. Okay? So we don't really know what was going on. In New York, discrimination lawsuits, these things have pretty good hit rates. She's going to get something out of this, but to be quite honest, if we were being fair, if the legal system, if discrimination law worked like the rest of the legal system, she would actually have to prove that she was discriminated against for being black. And therefore, most discrimination lawsuits that you would probably read wouldn't even pass the smell test. But because discrimination law presumes guilt and you have to prove yourself innocent, she'll probably get a couple of $100,000 out of this deal, maybe even $1 million, maybe even 2 or 3, and she'll get paid to go away. Because that's how these lawsuits are written. Lawsuits are written, especially against corporations, with the intention of forcing a settlement. So we saw this with the CTE lawsuit. I don't know how many of y'all watched my video on CTE lawsuit, but that guy was an absolute idiot. The lawyer who wrote the CTE lawsuit, he was a moron. And within that moronic lawsuit that didn't fit wrestling, it fit more like football or something like that. What he did is he put the Ashley Mazzaro rape thing in it. So what ends up happening is you will end up arguing with people talking about the CTE lawsuit. You won't even be talking about CTE. You'll be talking about Ashley Mazzaro or how she was raped over at the tribute to the troops, and WWE told her to shut up and be quiet about it and all this kind of stuff because it's in a lawsuit. But the point of this stuff is only to try to say, ha ha ha, I embarrassed you in public, now give me money. Are you going to pay me out? Now, she's such a small timer that they probably will just pay this out and be done with it, because they do have bigger fish to fry. It's smart on her behalf. You know, they about to get this big windfall of money from the purchase. And, you know, the company's kind of sensitive right now due to Vince McMahon stuff. Well-timed lawsuit. Kudos to that. But the merits of this lawsuit are absolutely ridiculous. You know, to claim that you feel discriminated against because other people made comments against other people. It's, oh my God, somebody said that we should have a terrorist wrestler. And that makes me feel uncomfortable. That's discriminatory against me, a non-Muslim black woman. What? Oh, okay. And I'm pretty sure in New York it won't matter. On the internet, it doesn't matter. You know, I'm not comfortable with this one. I think they're going to have to pay something out on this one because it's a giant corporation. They're going to look like bullies if they don't give her something. But if they do give her something, it's going to be an admission of guilt. And they're definitely going to fire that Ryan Callahan guy. Maybe somebody else will take the L too. But to me, this seems like a bunch of basura. You know, outside of the Mansoor stuff, which I said is legitimately awful, this is not a very good lawsuit. It sucks. Most lawsuits suck because they really don't have that much grounding. It's all in how you choose to argue them. And, you know, I didn't get into how they broke down the New York law and all that kind of stuff because nobody cares about that. But this lawsuit specifically is made to create the idea that even if she personally was not attacked or called any names, but there was a quote unquote culture in which she had to operate in, that she operated in for a year and some change until she took those chairs and was fired. Which is always weird how it happens. Like all these women always sue after they get fired or after they leave and go to another job and they run out of money or something like that. And if we're being honest, and I like to be honest on this channel, I don't see why you would hire these people. Again, working under these conditions where you're constantly under surveillance, why even be bothered, man? Why even be bothered? I would not hire these people. I would not want to be around them. If I worked in a place and I found out somebody was doing that kind of snitch stuff where you're running and tell the boss every single little thing that I joke about or I talk about, I don't want to be around you. And then that ends up being discrimination, right? Because you're only treating me like this because I'm a woman and I'm black. It's like, no, because you're a piece of shit and I can't say anything around you without you emailing somebody behind my back. That's very stressful. Who wants to live with that? But alas, we are where we are. What do you guys think about this lawsuit? Like, share, subscribe. I'll talk to you guys later. Peace out.